All right. Oh, shocking. So I'm not singing tonight, so no worries. Even it looks like we would sing. Hey, welcome to the AI Monday in Berlin. My name is Dirk Hofmann. I'm one of the founders of Dane Studios. We also, as you can see here with the logo, one of the, would say, curator behind. So we have different chapters in different cities and so on. But today we are here in Berlin. We are live here. We also have people online, so that's also why we want to get started. And I think we have a super interesting topic. Let's talk money. And so the whole idea of the speeches you will hear in the next couple of minutes is about the business case behind how to generate sustainable value. And then we will kind of close with a panel, so also the opportunity to ask questions. So very quickly about Dane Studios, because you might wonder who on earth is that company. We are data and AI consultancy. We are German-Finnish. That has a bit of a background that we three founders, the oldest one in the picture, unfortunately. We have a joint history with companies before, like Nokia. What we do is we're helping companies really from the early days of identifying data opportunities all the way to executing them. As you can see, that's also reflected in the roles, strategists, scientists, BI developer, and so forth. And we're on 4 locations. So Berlin is in Germany, our hometown. In Finland, Helsinki is our second one. But we also have an office in Munich and Vienna. That's about it. So now let's go ahead into the content. And I want to introduce my moderator, curator, and curator of the program, Max. So Max, over to you.
Thank you, Dirk. And also welcome from my side to our physical audience today and also to all the people online. So as you have seen on the first slide, there was Dane Studios. There's also the logo Körber. So quickly to Körber. We are structured in 5 business areas. So we have pharma, supply chain, tobacco, tissue. I'm personally the product manager from Körber Digital. And today we bring this together with Dane to you. AI Money, let's talk business. So let me give you a quick recap how we came to this topic and why we are discussing this. So we all have this gut feeling that AI, generative AI, is highly promoted. We are totally high on the hype curve. So I wanted to put some numbers to this, and as always, what we can do for this is taking the Google Trend Lab as a proxy. So how many people are searching for this topic? And coming from a data science background, we also need a reference. So let's take a banana for scale here, just that we have a feeling what exactly where we are talking about those numbers. And as you can see, also the banana had a type state during Corona with banana bread and all that stuff. So we have the reference, and let's focus on the last quarter of this. And you see numbers are going crazy here. So everybody's looking for AI, everybody's interested in this. And in this state, in this time, we see, for example, Google losing 100 billion in market cap just because a demo didn't went too well. And to put this in perspective, 100 billion, this is more than the GDP of some countries. This is more than the market cap of BMW or Deutsche Bank. So this is really big what we are talking about here. And this is on the, let's say, consumer side of our day-to-day business side. So let's also take the look on the venture capital, on the capital side of things. And what we see here right now, we already have 13 unicorns, so companies with a valuation north than 1 billion. And we have a clear lead on this. It's OpenAI. You all have heard it so far, I guess, with 29 billion. So we can constitute right now consumers, or we as people interested in AI. The capital market is interested highly in this. We will see much more unicorns than this happening. And then I also wanted to map the tool landscape here for you. When you do this, you check what happened during the last years with this. And I have to say, it's not possible to map this as of right now. You see, in 2017, it was slowly. We had some new tools. Then it was much more fast-paced. But right now, 2023, you can't keep up with this anymore. Every hour, every day, you have new tools coming on the market. So this is just insane. And you can do crazy stuff with AI these days. For example, you could put Elon Musk in front of the AI campus. What you also can do is having
Hi,
Elon
Max, you are
Musk.
totally right. It's amazing what we see happening in the AI space right now. I heard people wanted to stop the developments for 6 months. Imagine that. Anyways, please stop boring everyone and taking the precious time from the actual speakers. Let's find out about the business value delivered by AI, finally.
Thank you, Alan, and totally right. So let's get this started and let's introduce our speakers for today. We have 3 speeches, 3 keynotes prepared for you today. We'll first start with Lorenz from Aleph Alpha. He will show us what we really can do with foundation models, how they can increase, how can they accelerate the development of use cases. Then we have Andreas Leder from InspectifAI, who will dive deep with us into one use case with InspectifAI. And lastly, we put the overarching portfolio management on top. So Andreas Mazat will show us how this works, how you make the best out of your data products. And with this, I hand it over back to our moderator, Dirk.
Yeah, so of course, my task is super easy. I would like to welcome Lorenz on stage. And yeah, I think, of course, Aleph Alpha is quite known. And I think now you can open up what is the cool thing. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. The cool thing, we don't know it yet. All right. So we have no clue what it's going to be in 3 months, 3 weeks, 6 months, 2 years from now. But what I'm trying to do is just give you a little glimpse of what you can do with it. And basically what differentiates our approach to other ones out there and how you can create and capture value from all of this. So let's see how this works. All right. So basically, the way I broke it down is in how to capture value with all of this is 3 factors that are essential to getting the most out of not just any language models, but any sort of AI. Know your place as a company, either as a customer or as a company that is developing, researching, or implementing anything with AI. Know your goal as an organization. If you don't know what you're going to do with it, it's pretty much useless calling up any consultancy or buying it at the end and just saying, hey, we did some AI stuff. Might be helping you. Oh, got to get the phone call. And it all works only if you're able as an organization, maybe as a developer or an implementer or as a user, you got to build trust. If you don't build trust with the AI system, no one's going to make use of them. And that would be a shame because there's a lot of value you can get from all of this. So basically, know your place is where I want to start first. From our perspective, Aleph Alpha is pretty clear what we can do and what we can't do. So we are an R&D company. We're not very good at UI. Actually, we're very, very bad. We're okay-ish at building applications. So we know what we're really good at, and that's research on large language models. So you can see the top UX. We're not going to take care of this, any sort of it. On the application layer down below, we're a full stack AI company. However, we know that there's companies out there that are much better at not just taking a model and implementing it, but also scaling with the customers. And that's sort of know your place. If you pretend to be a small, or if you're a small company, you pretend you can scale with Körber or any large company, you might want to check yourself because there's a lot of things you gotta, think about when implementing a large language model, security related, whatever it is, basically. So on the application layer, we know what we are and how we work with them. But our focus is right on the intelligence layer, basically conducting research. And yes, there's a lot of models. Max already said it, basically on a daily basis. My Twitter feed and my LinkedIn feed is filled with new model has been developed. New open source models, which are really great, by the way, have been released into the wild. And basically every customer asks us, why should I be using you and not an open source model is one of the great questions that will be answered at some point in the future. But it doesn't just go down to who we are and know your place, but it's also where you want to run it on, right? So infrastructure is a huge deal when it comes to implementing a large language models with customers. Many customers believe that you need large HPC clusters to run models. Not quite, but you need a lot of power still for customers not reachable. Smaller companies usually rely on large scales. And we're like, hey, if we want to create value for the customers, and tons of customers are not very, especially in Germany, but also in Europe, very much fond of the idea of implementing large language models and being stuck with only one hyperscaler, right? If you look at the landscape of large language models, you can pretty much see a consolidation of the market. Large language models providers or developers going with one of the hyperscales. OpenAI goes with Azure. Cohere goes with AWS. Obviously, DeepMind going with Google. And if you're a customer and you go like, I don't really know if I want to stick with one of them, or actually I want to run it on my own infrastructure. As if you want to provide value as an AI company, you got to be able to run it on a customer's hardware. So basically, we're till this point the only company that is able to run on-premise with customers, especially when it comes to sensitive data. But what does this mean? Not just from our side, if you know your place, but it's also relying on the customer side, right? If I'm a customer, I have to know my place in all of this. Am I interested in just using a sort of application that runs on top of some large language models? Do I want to get into the research of things? Do I want to work with a company on the intelligence layer of things? So you before just going out there and say like, I need one AI, I want to buy one AI, I want to implement it as fast as possible. As a company, you got to make sure to know what your place in this, I don't call it, let's call it the AI value chain. You have to know your place of where you are, and you have to be real about it. If you don't know that you're not good at R&D, don't go into R&D. If you're not very good at using UI, UX, get someone else to do it. And many companies that we work with, they're like, oh, we can do it all. And then very fast, we find out this is not the case. So basically for customers, but also of companies providing a language model, any sort of AI, you got to know your place. I'll skip that one. Know your goal is basically, because I want to do more Q&A. So if you have questions, you can also shout in between. Know your goal, all right? If you don't really know what you want to use AI for, you might want to educate yourself first. If you say, I want to have some process which is not working well, I just want to have it digitalized. This is not a great way to go about it. If you have a not so optimal process, just throwing some AI at it is not going to solve it. All right. So you got to, before just implementing or going into, hey, I want to do this AI thing, you might want to think, hey, is this process that we're working, are we actually changing something with the project, or are we taking a process which is not optimal and just putting a summarization endpoint from a large language model provider and hope that things are going to change? It will most of the time not do it because people will stick to their old behavior. So we got to have processes be accompanied by the change that comes with technology. And, you know, you can do a lot with large language models. That's sort of the fascinating thing about it. You don't always need a new model for every functionality that you want to get out there. And that's the beauty about the generalizability. So you can take a model, a core code, and basically use it in every department of an organization. And the funny thing is, or not the funny thing, the fascinating thing is it's not so much about retraining models with a specific knowledge. What you want to make use of and getting the most of large language models is being able to transfer and transition the knowledge or the capability of one capability to another department. So if you're in the finance department and you want to have some sort of summarization, it doesn't make sense to train a finance summarization model. Just what you want is, I want this one model and I want it to have the same capability in a completely different department. And that's what you're working on. So focus less on putting more knowledge in it and making sure that you're actually able to transfer the capability of a model to a completely different department. And that's what you have to be sure about. And knowing your goal is, hey, do I just want to do this for my own department and show my management that I'm really upfront the innovation ladder? Or do I try something that's usually not very common in a large corporation, a large organization? I have a look to the left and the right and ask, hey, is there anyone else in need of this? And this is basically a very human element of making good use of AI, is making sure that people know about the abilities and making sure that they also get access to it. Just gotta check the time here. All right. And the third factor that we got is build trust. So as I said in the beginning, we're an R&D company, and I'm not going to claim that we solved explainability in large language model, but we to a degree did. What do I mean by this? I hope this video works. So we're using something that's called attention manipulation. Basically, we can link the output that has been generated model, not just to the initial source, but we can go down on a token basis and see what the model paid attention to when generating output. So basically, we look into the little glass and say, hey, why is it that this big T9 told me this is going to be the next token? And this is pretty much a way of enabling trust, because if people don't know why the system created a certain output, they're never going to trust it. And it's not just making sure that it is based on some sort of plausibility. You know, you can always go and, hey, sort of, I believe this answer has been created from this document, but if the user has to go through 1,000 documents and search a potential answer, the user is not going to make use of it. So basically going down in a paragraph sentence or even on a token basis and giving the users insight into the model is going to be a trust building exercise, which at the very end will decide if the users wants it or not. So if you take, and that's the fun part about large language models, it's not just in text. I forgot this piece. So basically, if you want to get the most out of it, I mean, this is what it's all about. Where's the future of AI heading? Multimodality is obviously a part of it. So the more we know how the model comes to a decision, or basically what does it relate back when generating an answer? We can put this into a text, as I showed before, but we can also have it on images and know exactly what a person or what the model paid attention to. The funny thing about it, that there's when you provide customers a certain value proposition, you have to explain in very simple terms. They're like, how do I know that this is correct? Right? So we have to start not humanizing, but making very much sure that people understand how machines function to a certain degree of abstraction, and put it perhaps in human terms, in the sense that if I was to ask you, just what do you see? You're going to give me, probably everyone's going to give me a very different answer. One people's going to say, well, it's a construction site. The other one say, well, it's a construction site with a crane in front. And this is how we have to build trust in this machine, making sure that people understand or learn to understand how the system, where it gets its answer from. Until we haven't solved this, we're not going to be able to capture the value that comes from large language models. So, and then as I said before, the fascinating part is that you don't always have to get one new model for one. It's not so many README files that you have to go through, but it's just one at the very end. And that's the fascinating part. If you have a use case like this, we did this with a customer in the obviously insurance realm. The ability of taking the bits and pieces of functionality that large language models offer and connecting them simple in one use case, and not being reliant on, this one model can do this, and then I put another model behind this that can do that, but have it all in one. So basically what we had here is insurance claims. And if we have insurance claims, this was the article or the description of the accident that was given to us. So this is the original source of what the model sort of paid attention to when generating the output, which is shortening the time of, insurance claims inspection, basically. So what we had here is just a little extract. So what the model can do, if you give it one piece of text, you want it, hey, you little intern, you're very good. You do the 80% well. Hey, give me a little summary. All right, no problem. Summarization endpoint, boom, summary. If you want to have it, entity extraction, and this is something that I showed before, right? These models can do summarization. They can do entity extraction. They can do sentiment analysis. You can do question answering machines. You can do OCR if they're multimodal. You can do scene description, imagery description, search embedding, whatever it is. There's legit no limit to the capability. Well, there's obviously limits, but to the ability of capturing the value that these models bring in real life. So we ask it simply, and there's no training involved in this. And I think this is going to be amazing with customers that are very fond of their data, and they're like, I don't really want to train a specific model with my data. and just like giving the ability of a model to just work with the data, understand ambiguity in text, and understand and extracting it and displaying it for users in the way that he or she can make best use of. So summarization, no problem, entity extraction in a structured form, but also going with it in a little shed, right? And then that's another endpoint of the model. Just go like, hey, talk to me about this damage claim. And what we have here is barely see, but we asked them who's responsible probably for this accident. And the model answers, well, I assume from what I read that I think it was the Mercedes or someone, no, obviously it was an Audi who drove too fast. This is probably the likely source. This is going to be the answer to your question. But also, as I said before, no one's going to trust it if we don't know the source of where the answer comes from. So this is essential. And then basically continuing the usage of this model, making sure that people trust it. So, yes, as I said, doesn't just go down to text with these models. Multimodality is just the beginning. Very much curious what we see, but if we're able to know where we are as a customer, who we are as a customer, or as a company, as someone who's providing a large language models or any sort of AI models to a customer base, but also making sure that the customer understands what it wants, and then being able to know the place and making sure that we gain the trust. I think there's great progress in what lies ahead in when implementing AI in the future. So this is, if you want more information, this is pretty much us. And then thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Lorenz. Thanks. Yes, thanks, Lorenz, for this introduction. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I have some questions here as well, but anyone want to start? Okay, I start. No, maybe one topic, because I think now you have kind of introduced the platform. I think you also, I think, is to my knowledge, have a lot of interaction with different companies and organization approaching you and so on. What would you say are the three do's and don'ts you would say if they come to you? What makes you feel like, okay, this sounds like they're really serious, and this maybe, okay, they might really need to rethink a bit?
First of all, I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now out there in the market. So there's a lot of organizations say, all right, there's something going on and I don't really know what it's all about, but it seems I have to jump on this bandwagon or else I'm going to lose. And this is, I'd say, many of the requests that do come to us like, hello, can we talk? And this is up to the AI community, I'd say, making sure that people understand what it's all about. And that's, I'd say that's most of them. Other organizations that approach us, some of them really know what it's all about. And those are usually larger tech companies or companies that have been doing some sort of tech for the last decades or so. The ones that are struggling the most is the German Mittelstand, which is out there and they want to change, but they don't have a lot of prerequisites which you need simply in making use of this technology. And it starts with data. Very simple. That's, hey, what format is it? I'm not saying PDF is going to kill us all, but there's a great chance that it will be doing so. And if there's a lot of deal has to be done on the education side of things, what can it do? Because people, they heard it can do it all. And then we show them that it can do a lot, but not everything. And then they're often disappointed and they go like, oh, I thought all my problems are going to be solved with your technology. And we're like, well, it can solve some problems, but not all problems. I'd say that's just like the great picture of things in the market.
Maybe just related to that, you mentioned now data, but how do you see the competences? What are the skills a company should have or build up within their organization to leverage really the opportunities you just described?
Funnily enough, I don't think it's pure technological at first. It comes down to the willingness to change and the acceptance that there is some big wave rolling at us all. I think that's where it starts in the minds of people. If they don't accept that there's some sort of change coming, they're not going to have very much a chance in surviving in all of this. And it goes down to very profound things such as, hey, do you know what your data is mostly made of? Do you know the format of your data? So very much basic data science stuff, which has not been taken care of in the last ever. And now it pays back at them saying like, oh, perhaps I should have thought this digitalization thing a few years ago, I think, but it starts with the people and being able to say, all right, there's something big and we have to play a role in this, and then get this mind shift, not just on top level agreement, not just C-level, but also it has to be carried through all the levels in all departments. So it's not just the CTO office that has to know what's going on in the technology realm. Everyone has to know it. It might be HR, it might be finance, might be sales. They have to be up to speed of what's coming up.
Cool.
Yeah, Carsten, I have a question on explainability. So the example that you gave for the text, it was like a token-based explainability, no? And is this really the level of explainability that people want? I would have thought that, well, it's enough to give the sentences or paragraphs that were used to build the answer. But is it really like this token level explainability that's requested?
We just went down to it. So our R&D wise, we're like, all right, how deep can we go? But to a degree, yes. If you want to know why is this model saying orange and not black, you want to have the answer to it, and you want to know it. And there's two things about this manipulation. So you can use it in one way for explainability, in the sense that you know why the model generated a certain output. But you can also use the same technique to steer the model, in the sense that you know when the prompt has been some sort of input, and you find out that the model is answering the way that you don't find it to be appropriate. You can find out already in the prompt what has been, why the model has. So there's two ways to make use of this. It's some sort of, it's to part steerability of the model, but also the explainability. And yes, actually token wise is, if it goes down to one word, why you want to have the answer, that's it. But usually people are very much happy when it says, all right, this sentence sounds logical to me. I want to make use of it. And you can have the entire document or paragraph or sentence, but some say, hey, I want it down to the token.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice and interesting talk. Let's say I'm a data scientist, and I'm really interested in seeing the other side of the table. Can you share a couple of, let's say, stories that you have? I mean, what was the craziest request that you get from a company, or the one that was so-so, or the one that was up to the target? So I have a picture as a data scientist, you know, what is going on the market right now.
Craziest request. It's a good one. Don't have an answer right now. I might have to think about it and then reach out to you again. But it's some. Well, it goes into the well, if your AI can read the entire internet, can it give me some sort of prediction of how events are going to turn out? So basically, it's the expectation of you scrape everything on this planet, and then it gives you some silver bullet to solve all world's problems. But probably this is what every AI company gets at some point from some customers. Can you solve all my problems? But I've really got to think about this a little bit more.
Let me share. So this is Mark. Thanks for the insights. One question though. My experience is that, speaking about German Mittelstand, they are, let's say, under a false impression of how adaptable they are. And looking at, as you said, the necessity for them to change to make AI work and to make data models work. Do you have any experience as for failure rate, meaning like out of 10 projects, how many are doomed to failure due to the inability to change to the modern times?
That's an excellent question of Mittelstand and how they go about all of this. I'd say probably 20% something go. They're like, all right, we get approached the way where it's like, hey, can you help us? We have this, we heard about this, and we talk to them. They're like, all right, let me get back to you 2 weeks. And they say, I really want to do this. What do I have to do? And then you tell them, this is what you have to do. And this is pretty much often where they shut off and then say like, all right, perhaps we're just going to try it the way we've always been doing things. It's the sale and implementation. That's why I say it's a very human process. It's a very new technology. It still needs a lot of human interaction to comfort a potential customer making use of the technology. Just the expectation as it goes with internet companies, you just use an API, they plug it in and then it works and everyone is fascinated. That works very well. But it's a much more, it frightens a lot of people because they don't really know what it's all about. And they have some sort of fear and coming back a third and a fourth time. Although we're open up, but we're a small company. So comforting everyone in the market is going to be a tough challenge. But this is what it comes down to. But the way we can change it, and that's perhaps the even more interesting people, if we get more interaction with them on a human level, whatever exchange forum there is, just showing them some engineering videos on how to implement a model, make the best use of it, and adapting it for some. This is not going to cut it. This is going to make the CTO people very happy, the data scientists, and everyone involved, but that's a very small portion of the organization. And unless the entire organization is really behind it and say, all right, we make a big shift and everyone is involved in this, you're going to have a lot of resistance from a lot of parts in the organization. So we work a lot with the public sector. And in the public sector is very much, hey, I'm a head of a department. And what I hear from this, you're going to cut my workforce. That's a very much reasonable fear. Huh? We got to talk to these people over and over and over again and be like, it's not about cutting people. It's about making them actually do their work that they've been hired to do. If you look at email inboxes, right, in the public sector, there's armies of people just making sure that the right email gets to the right people. What value is in all of this? And unless you've actually, on a very much simple basis, described the problem and how AI or any technology can solve problems, they're going to resist changing it. And that's very much anchored in the Mittelstand. Large corporations have big CTO's office and people know how to work with models they've been doing for the last 20 years or something. But with these, you got to go and talk to the people. That's what it's all about.
We have one question from the outer space, from the metaverse, I would say. For you, the next time a customer asks me if the AI can solve it for me, is it allowed to push very lightly? Sorry, that's the question.
Can I read it?
Maybe it goes a bit along about what you also said there, related to the silver bullet.
I'd say is, what is the real problem that a customer has? Because most of the time the customer doesn't really know what his problem is or where the problem lies. Perhaps it's often also a problem that can be solved by no technology whatsoever, but it's a human problem. It's a process problem or whatever that is. And unless the customer really knows what it's all about and he can precisely define, hey, we have this issue and I believe AI can solve it, there's no use in just using any sort of technology. And then comes down to the human level, making sure that the customer's problem is understood, but also that the customer understands his own problem. Unless he really has identified it, technology is going to do no good.
Yes, I think this is the main point, and it's not only specific to Gen AI, but overall. So I guess good summary. There's, looking at the watch, I think there's one final question you can ask. There's one caveat, because Lorenz needs to go to the center of the business, which is Munich, by train. So he will not be at the panel. So any questions, last opportunity. Of course, I guess you can be reached out afterwards, but if you have any questions, now is the chance. Just need to say Munich and then suddenly questions come up.
John.
Hi, my name is Jem. I'm owner of a boutique creative studio. I have a lot of customers, the hidden champions in the Mittelstand. So you were mentioning your on-premise package Could you describe this a little bit? What are you actually shipping and what kind of services attached to that?
Obviously, this is not supposed to be a company pitch, but I'll take it. It's very much simple. There's two ways to do it. The way we did software in the 70s, basically hardware comes to us and we load it up on the graphic cards, so our AI HPC cluster in Bayreuth runs on A100s. Basically, this is what we tell customers to buy. And then it's just a Docker container that we ship, and then they load it up and then they can make use of it as a licensing. So there's two ways to basically the basis model or the business models, either licensing on-premise or in cloud, or via our data center, which is here in Germany. So it is actually that simple. There's no magic sauce behind it.
The second question.
Yeah, so my question is more about some attempts to implement autonomous agents using this technology. For example, people try to implement developers or automating customer support and so on. So I wanted to know if these use cases are beyond the limits of these large language models, or is it like a valid use case to implement?
So a big problem right now with the large language model is the issue of hallucination. And that's the last thing you want in customer service. You're like, hey, can I do this or not? And go, yeah, go for it. So we had I'm not going to lie, but we had a project and we used another model. And the question was, how much is the €9 ticket? And it says 12 euros. And you go like, well, this is not really a business case behind it. But there is a case behind it. Why is that? The impact of these large language models is not so much identifying specific parts in the text, but understanding ambiguity in large sums of text or images. And this is what you want to make use of. And it's not always just, do I use the large language models or you can use it both together, right? So you have one string of the conversation can be pretty much used by the large language model going, all right, this is free speech. I want to just interact with the model. But also, if you have some sort of studio behind it, you can have it very much designated and given only answers that you wanted to give. So if you have some sort of classification and you realize, all right, the intent of this conversation is not going where I want it to be, then it takes the classical path of predefined answers. They go like, all right, Mr. User, please go back, or what is it that you really want to do? I think these models are going to get more capable, and they will certainly at one part not hallucinate. That's potentially. And if it does, what mechanisms can be implemented to stop it from hallucinating? We go ahead and say, hey, we don't actually want to make use of the world knowledge that we train the models on. So our focus as a company is just making use of company data. So you don't want your chatbot to answer with the world knowledge that it acquired during the training process, but you only want it to be answering questions based on your data set. So we're not interested about with what we'll train our models on and making use of this knowledge, but we want to make use of the ability to understand language. And that's a different approach. And the more we're able to just focusing the output generated by a model on the data that is the basis and not so much on the world knowledge that was trained on, this is a way to basically eradicate the issue of hallucination and then making it usable for any sort of company chatbots. But also here, if the customer doesn't want it, you have to accept it. And this is something just automizing things is not going to do the change. They're not going to show you more love. I was in a customer chatbot 2 days ago because my flight got canceled. This is the worst experience in my life. I would love to call, but I had no one to call. And I know it would have gone faster with someone to call. So it's going to be to a degree up to the market, but also up to the people to decide on what they're going to use. But I believe the models have a very great chance of just taking a large role and making use of this use case. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, Lorenz. I think here are your contact address.
Should be right. Yes.
Should be right.
Believe it's
I think
correct.
focus on the email address. So
But I think there is the Aleph Alpha playground and so on. So there's different opportunities also to really explore the platform.
Yes, and please don't be scared. It doesn't look very fancy. As I said, we're an R&D company. So if you have any issues, but we're also here on the third floor it is. So shoot a mail, come by, we can chat, drink a coffee. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. All right, time for the next speaker. The good news is now there will be two Andreas. So now let's start with Andreas number one. From InspectifAI, Andreas Leder. So he will introduce InspectifAI. I think super use case in terms of, addressing a real problem for an industry and also kind of in an environment which is quite regulated. So also I think he will show how you can actually make a case out of such a situation or even leverage that as an opportunity. So Andreas, looking forward for your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Dirk. Thanks for the invitation. Also, a very interesting presentation from Lorenz. I know our place. Our place is pharma. And what I brought with us is our case we established in pharma. For presentation, I don't want to make it long. Who we are InspectifAI. We are founded by Körber. We are founded in Karlsruhe in 2021. We are roughly 30 people, a bit more now. We are a very multicultural team, and we are united by one. Me? Do you hear me? Yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we are here now. Hello? So sorry for this hiccup. Yeah, we are united by one vision, and this is revolutionizing the optical inspection in pharma. So what I'm talking about, everyone knows this one here. So this is a vial. We all know it from our corona injection, and everyone is curious about, is there something in it? And there's regulation in place. So what the pharmaceutical companies all have to do is they have to inspect it either manually or automatic. And you can imagine if you have a corona or any vaccine in the world, which is produced probably 1 billion doses per year, you don't do this manually, you do this automatic by machinery. And what the machinery is doing is mainly what the person on this picture is doing. It's turning it around, looking from different angles, and it's looking for any contamination or defects. In case there is a defect, there's a second inspection required, or you have to dispose it. And you can imagine in low-cost countries like Switzerland, you don't want to do this. And also it's quite exhausting work. You can imagine if you go to Switzerland or any other production in the world, and there are the people or the poor people who have to look on these vials, it's getting exhausting quite quick. So they are changing, like 2 people sitting there, and the third one is turning in, and you cannot do this for a long time. So actually, this case really cries after AI, because you can inspect this with an AI model. But it's a bit tricky when it comes to the regulated industry, because the regulated industry wants to know what the model is doing. So the industry here is lagging a bit behind compared to other industries like the automotive, where it's common to inspect parts or, I don't know, sort some goods. So what's the problem we are seeing or we are facing? So this is an Lyo product. So it's a deep fried frozen product. And I think everyone here in this room can see, okay, it doesn't look right. So the traditional inspection system will reject it because it's not at the place or where it's supposed to be. It's shrinking a bit, so it will be rejected. But what about this? I mean, we can see, especially the picture in the top on the right side, this is just misplaced, but the product is totally fine. And you can imagine with traditional inspection systems, which are based on thresholds and rule-based tools, you cannot detect this. So this will be rejected, even you don't want to have this. Explaining a bit what we can do with AI, and it always comes the question, what is AI really doing and why are we using it? We are bending the curve, and I will explain you why. So with the traditional inspection, there are limits. It's clear if you look on this diagram. Try to go to the left, but okay. With the traditional inspection, you have a rule-based system. So you can say, okay, this is my threshold. And I've done multiple measurements. Is it a good while or is it a bad while in this case? And you can say, okay, if I put my threshold here, I have plenty of good ones, but I have to reject multiple products. So due to safety reasons, I even have to push the threshold up because you don't want to have an injection within a contaminated product. So you could also do to have a better output. If you're a contract manufacturer, you could put it down, but you can imagine FDA will come and shut down the site because putting out so much contaminated products, it's not a nice thing. With AI, what we are actually doing is we are bending the curve. And so we can really say, okay, sorry. Can I go back? Yes. So we can really supervise the model, train it, and then on one hand, hiring the detection rate where we have to, and lowering the false eject rate on other cases where it's needed to have a better output. And this is where our solution brings really the benefit for pharmaceutical companies or contract manufacturer. It's quite simple. What we are doing is we train models. So we go to the production site, we collect all the images, we label them, we train models, but then we have to bring them back on those machineries. And you can imagine those machineries, they are quite old because once a pharmaceutical company is equipping the shop floor and it's running and producing, it's never changing because it's really like printing money. And so we are struggling a bit by bringing AI to the system. So what we do is, it's clear we bring in an edge device, which is easy to install. And there we bring in the model to in a frozen state so that the regulation is fulfilled. This should not be in here. I will skip a bit because it takes otherwise too long. When it comes to the AI, so what are usually the things we are using? We are using image-based classification, sequence-based classification, and object detection. We will focus on two cases to show you why we are doing this. Usually it's a rule-based model. So what is the pharmaceutical company doing? Doesn't matter whether it's the traditional way or the AI way. They are running defect kits through the machinery. So they manipulate products with, here you can see this is a glass particle on top of the product, and they are in a qualified run, for sure not in a commercial run. They are proceeding this to the machine, and the machine for sure needs to eject it. And afterwards they do a human machinery comparison, and the machine always have to be better than the human. So this is what needs to be fulfilled, and it's the same for AI. So with the model, we can show this on heat maps nicely. So when you still see the glass particle and you see the overlay of the heat map, you can see where the model is focusing on, everywhere where it's getting brighter or yellow. And on on the other side, another nice approach we are using is sequence models. Sequence models have the advantage, if you look on the syringe on this animation, everyone I think would say, okay, there's something in it. But as soon as it starts turning, we can see, oh, it's actually outside. So I can still use it, maybe just clean it, or maybe if it's if no one complains, we could even bring it out to the market. Skip the object detection. So, as I already mentioned, there are multiple regulations which we have to follow. So this is a bit, let's say, the killer of the value. But on the other side, it also brings in the value because, as I explained in the beginning, this is really the big hurdle for everyone to enter this industry, and also why the industry is lagging behind. And I will not dig into the details because it probably bores you too much and would be taking too much time. But just to mention one thing, the biggest challenge is to describe what a model is really doing to a regulation. And therefore, we invented a model change report, which is actually a birth certificate, and bringing in all the needed information, how the model is created. And this will be attached to the regulatory qualification which needs to be done on site in the pharmaceutical production. So, but where's really the value? So this is how it looks like when you go to the production. You see our edge devices on the left upper image. For sure, we implement them in an electrical cabinet, but for the testing and the qualification, we left them outside that everyone could see them. In the lower image, you see such a machinery which brings all the pharmaceutical products in front of cameras. And as you can see in the video, there's one of the cameras which is taking the images supported by our AI model and is taking the decision about should it be rejected or not. What is really the benefit for the customer? I explained what the false eject rate is, and this is actually one of the KPIs where all the manufacturers look after. And we are lowering those eject rates with quite a lot of percentage, even up to 90%. And talking a bit about numbers, for sure, it depends on the capacity of the production. It depends on the value of the product, but we can easily save here a few thousand Ks a year. Another nice factor is also that it's not only about the money, it's also about making the process easier or increasing the output. And one of the things we reached, and which was really happy notice for sure by the customer, is that we could switch from a 3 to a 2-shift model in the secondary inspection. Why in the secondary inspection, you can imagine if you run the machine with quite a lot of, or with a very high speed, there are multiple products coming out. They often have multiple automatic or semi-automatic inspection machineries afterwards where the people look by hand. And in this process, there can be captured 9 to 20 people just doing the handling of the products. And if you have less rejects, for sure, you have less efforts here. So this is it. This is our use case. This is really one particular case, how you can make a value out of AI here in the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm happy to take your questions.
Thanks, Andreas. Now I got it.
So interesting presentation. So now I think as Andreas is still there for the panel, if there's any kind of short question now, otherwise I would continue with the presentation. So we then would take all the questions afterwards for the panel. But there's one question.
I tried to keep it short. So amazing numbers, by the way. You generate data as for the faulty products. Any way to utilize those data to improve product quality from the get-go? And if so, are you doing it?
So by hiring the detection rate, for sure, this also means you increase the quality, because you can imagine if you have to touch the product twice, or even the fact that you have to look on a product twice, and once you said it's good, afterwards you said it's bad. Yeah, even pharmaceutical companies would say this fact needs to assert inspection. So you really increase the quality. So really related to, I mean, we only do the inspection, is there contamination, but we cannot improve the product or something. So this is fixed. Other things which are considerable, but we are not doing is that you really dig into the details and think about what is the root cause. So for instance, if the reject rate is going down, why is it the case? So do we see something from the images? Is it the cool chain, or does the glass is changing due to a switch of the manufacturer? So here we are talking about anomaly detection, but this is more a future scenario.
All right. Thanks, Andreas, and welcome, Andreas. So I think this will be the last presentation, and I think also I think Max said it in the beginning, super kind of concluding what you have heard before, and of course then a perfect kind of also then leaning towards the panel. So welcome, Andreas. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me, and thanks a lot to the speakers before. Super nice. It's going to be hard to live up to that level of fun and core products. So we're getting a bit more conceptual now, and really talking about how to trace back business value of your data products in the context of being a datapreneur. So someone who generates value in organizations and big organizations with data. So yeah, topic. We had it already, so nice. I'm coming from Mindfuel. We are a company doing consulting services, and we have been founded in 2019 by the two founders, Max and Nadim. They are bringing into very different skill sets. The one, Max, is very experienced in product management, whereas Nadim has been working in the data science industry for years, and we are combining these two knowledges, these two extended practices to one single framework, and helping in particular scaled organizations to build valuable data products. We're going to dive a little bit more into detail now. So to start off with, no, too fast. To start off with, I would like to ask you one question. So it's not only me talking here. What do you see here, and what's the difference between these two pictures, or what you see in them? Inside, outside? What was that?
The old industry and the new industry.
Old industry and new industry. Does anyone know about the Amazon 4-star store? Okay, then I need to explain. So in the Amazon 4-star store, you only get products that are rated at least 4 stars online. So the big difference here at the old warehouse that we know, they try to put everything out there, right? Everything you can imagine, from clothing to food, in the bottom corner, they put it out and hope that they will sell properly. Whereas Amazon really tries to focus on those products that they deem most valuable. Right? So it's really about what's the right thing to do. And this is a challenge that we don't only see in retail, but in particular also in data teams, in big data units that do plenty of things. They build infrastructure, they build data assets, data pipelines, they build analytics products, which they ship into business processes or data products that we have seen before. So they have this challenge of what to do first, how to do it right. And value measurement is key to really make the right decision here. So this is why we're going to talk about or discuss value measurement here today. And I want to clarify also a little bit what we understand under value measurement, actually. Because being out in the market with all those clients, also from the Mittelstand, but also from big corporations who are very experienced in deploying analytics or AI models, it's not always the very same understanding. So on the one hand side, we have the technical teams who are very much looking into the technical performance of their models. We've just heard force detection rate, very important thing to also evaluate your models. Oftentimes this is happening during training, right? It's offline, maybe even before the model has been deployed. And then you have the business guys who are more interested in actual value generating in terms of money. So what do they earn in the end more? Can they cut people off? Can they cut other costs? That's really what's about in the business performance. And as a data product management company and as data scientists, we are trying to bring those two elements together better in the very different scenarios that we can imagine. So we really try to link those technical performance metrics that we have, accuracy of our models that we see in confusion matrices, to actual business value in terms of product metrics, or even dollars or euros or Swiss francs or whatever you're going to earn. So importantly, also in value measurement, the understanding that I try to provide you with today is an understanding of added value. So really what comes on top because you did a certain thing, build a data asset, build an AI model, ship it into the production. So this is really something that I'm discussing a lot with people out there, because sometimes you have the notion that, okay, if I deploy it now, my key performance metrics that I want to see in the business, my product metrics, they need to go up. But sometimes they don't go up, but it can have many reasons. Oftentimes you might do something or ship a certain use case because your performance in the market was worsening before. So then seeing KPIs going down further might not be a good measure for the value that you actually generated with your analytics product. It's a really hard problem in the end to figure out how to then even identify what's the value of the product. So what we are after today is about this green part here. So no matter what's happening in the outside world or in your company as a whole, we are trying to understand what is the value that I generated with my model, irrespective of the absolute value I'm earning. Good. At Mindfuel, I said we are bringing together data product management and data science, and we built up this data product management framework. And it's a comprehensive framework to organize scaled organizations. So it includes elements that you should have to build up your data product foundation. If you don't have this, you cannot build good AI models. It also includes your data product strategy, because in the end, everything you're going to build somehow should also be linked to your business strategy to begin with. And then at the core of this, we see the data product operating model, which is mostly about execution and the processes around to really make the right thing and make it right. So core to this is this data product development cycle. You all know this. If you're a data scientist, if you're product managers, whatsoever, you typically start off with exploration. And then as a product management focus, you should also do some discovery. So really understand what's the problem of your customers. Is there business value included? Can I actually do it? These are key questions that I should look into before I go then into really creating value along the delivery and operation cycle. And importantly, also look into the adoption phase. So what do I need to do to really ensure that my clients adopt the products that I'm developing? So value measurement is core to this. Along those different development cycles, I need to make plenty of decisions. Should I go on with my activities, developing an AI model? Is it good enough already? And in each of these different steps, value measurement can give me some very valuable insights on what I should do, what should I prioritize in terms of the different products or activities that are in my backlog as a development team. So when it comes to value measurement, I would argue that it's super important to consider value measurement from the very beginning. So it's nothing like you build a model and then in the end you see what you got and what you earned, but you really need to start with it from early on. First of all, because you need to probably ensure that you can measure in the end, depending on the scenario where you're in. Think of, you need to do an experiment, an A/B test, probably. So you need to think about, how do I do this? When do I do this? I shouldn't maybe do it too late. But also, due to the thing that I said before, it's super valuable to have these insights along the journey to really make the right decisions based on value and not only technical metrics. Sometimes it might be enough to focus on the technical metrics first, but in general, it might be valuable to also consider the dollar amount that gets earned in the very end. Good. So what's behind this? And maybe we look into this here. So I phrased a few concepts here and try to explain it a little bit. What you can see along this development cycle, it's not only that I increase the level of confidence from the very beginning to the very end, but it's also different in terms of difficulty and effort that I need to invest to get this value measurement actually done properly. So in the first stage, when I'm still in exploration, typically I just look into what's the potential that I can earn. Maybe I go to the business, calculate a business case, try to already get an idea about how to link my technical metrics to the business metrics, and align so the KPI tree, what's the set of KPIs that we need to influence such that you can earn value in the end as a business. Then it maybe gets already a little bit more specific with the technical potential. So now you really try to link back your accuracy metrics, maybe during discovery and delivery. You have already built the first MVP of your model. At least you have some first modeling runs done. And then you try already to see if I would deploy this model and nothing else happens in my organization. I don't have humans in the loop. Humans in the loop, very difficult for value measurement because they can do a lot of things in the end that you don't incorporate in your thinking. So at least here you would already know, if there was nothing else, what would my model be now? What would be the potential of my model to improve compared to a current baseline, for example? So this is actually very valuable also in terms of the discovery and delivery process. In particular, when we think about adoption, oftentimes, and we have heard it before, the challenge really is having the people on your side and really adopting those models, working along the models, depending on what use case you're looking into. And here, as a data team, you can at least showcase that your model is good, that there is the potential for value, and that maybe the right activities lie not in improving the model accuracy ever further, but really into looking, how can I make sure that people trust in my model? So the implication would be, don't gather more data to improve the model even further, but it would be, think about a model that provides me with that explanation that I need to really gain the trust and people to adopt the model. So that would be one part where it really makes a difference in terms of the decisions on what work I'm doing based on value measurement. And then if you come towards the deployment phase already, you delivered a first model, first pilot, first prototype, you may be able to do a acceptance testing, a test field with users out there. So you can think already about strategies on how to evaluate the value of your model when deployed to customers, for example, doing an A/B test, doing experimentation, but also introducing the model such that you can simply derive added value that you are generating from observational data maybe. So we can discuss a lot about these topics. Then afterwards, you also have the challenge to continuously monitor the value, right? And oftentimes you understand maybe for a short amount of time. So when you deployed the model, what changed in terms of metrics, but you might also want to understand how does this affect now my long-term gains, which is then again a very other different challenge on how to do this methodologically fine so that you have a proper understanding. Is it just a short-term effect that I see, or is it really expected that this value will be generated for the whole time that I'm looking into this? Apart from the different levels of confidence that I gain throughout the time and the different measures that I would like to do, there is an additional thing, right? When I'm out there, or at least in the last few weeks, I heard, hey, I would like to understand what value is behind deduplicating my data or a specific data set. Other people were asking, is it really worth it moving to that new platform, and which technology stack should I really use? Or people are asking, what is the best use case, the best AI model to develop now? Or even which are the products that I should focus on? So these are different types of products that I'm dealing with. At least at Mindfuel, we are considering this as products, should be managed as products. So users provide you with information of what they need here. And measuring the value of those different products is very different because they differentiate a lot, right? So for example, smart products or analytics products, so classical AI models, they rather directly generate value or relate to value. So you deploy something to a business process, some task gets easier, maybe some tasks gets better. You don't have as high of rejections as before. Whereas then for data assets and technology, the value generation is much more indirect. It only realizes because you can build better products up there. So really having this focus on what's the added value of bringing in that new data set or building up that new technology, it's getting increasingly hard the more indirect the effect is. So also because here you are closer to the revenues, actually, whereas in data assets and data tech products, it's more about the cost. And having then data on this to really model the impact on these different factors, it's very different. And that's something that we should keep in mind. But generally, a good start is to look into the analytics products, right? If you succeed in the end in shipping out AI models that really generate value, this means that you also did your work well down here. So then you have the right data assets in good enough quality, obviously, and you might also have a technology stack that supports at least model development and deployment, hopefully also running it long term. So you can kind of derive the prioritization decisions that you need to make, what to focus on from the value measurement that you have here on the top level. So now let's look into one quick example. And the example is from, this is a neutral example here now, but there are many examples where we did it like that. So it's about the technical potential, right? So really linking back the technical metric now to your business metric. So as a data scientist, we are looking into confusion matrix. We can go back to your example, Andreas. So we wanted to limit the false rejection rate, obviously because limiting the false rejection rate means we don't need to throw away as many injections as before. And it's rather clear what this means in terms of value, right? And this being rather clear in terms of value, we would put into an impact matrix. So we would really go to the business and ask them, hey, if I have a certain amount of false negatives, if I have a certain amount of false positives, but also for the right decisions, what's the value behind? What do you need to, or what's the relative payout for these different scenarios? And then we would multiply the model accuracies or the confusion matrix with the impacts behind those accuracies to then really get an indication on the business value of our model, summing all up the different fields here that we have done here, right? So multiplying it with each other would give you the value behind the true positives, behind the false positives, true negatives, false negatives, and then you would have an idea about the business value your model is generating once laid against the baseline to have this added value perspective in. So imagine you do a certain amount of false negatives today. with a certain cost, and you do a lower amount of false negatives in the future with a certain amount of cost, then you would understand what's the added value of the model if no people are involved any further in deciding whether something is to be thrown away or actually used. So this is it with the first example. I'm looking forward to your questions and having a nice further evening and discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, as such, I think we could already, Max could already open the panel then, so get all together. In the meantime, because we get some chairs, of course, there's an opportunity to ask Andreas right away a question. All keen for the panel. We go.
Yeah, we can have a quick break and what else? Maybe
Yeah, so 5 minutes is always a risky thing. Grab some drinks or food, and then we will have the panel.
No break.
No break. Okay. Okay, no break. But there will be still food, so no worries. Nobody will eat it. Yes.
All right. So I think also, yeah, welcome, Max. I think you had at the starting point, but maybe I think because you haven't you presented Körber, but maybe not presented your role, what you do at Körber Digital. So maybe you can say some words because I think it heavily relates to this topic. So some what you do. And maybe what's your relation to the title of the...
Exactly. Thank you, Dirk. So my role is senior product manager, and I'm in the venture building team. And this is then also leading the path to why this is especially important to us. So what is business value in terms of AI? Because I'm always at the intersection between our venture architects who want to build the next big thing, basically, and then on the other hand, software engineering and the data science team. So I somehow have to figure out what Anne just showed, the confusion matrix, the impact, and what exactly it brings if our data science team gets the next 1% in accuracy. Because then I will be asked, should we do this? Should we really put in the effort to get the model even better, or is this already sufficient? So this is my role, and this is why we also came up with why this is so relevant for Körber Digital, and especially for the venture building team, because this is what we do in Körber Digital. This is one of our columns, basically, the venture building.
And maybe related to that, to build on that, because Andreas Leder, can you share a bit, because this venture has gone through that journey and so on. Can you share a bit about the journey of InspectifAI and maybe also maybe from the idea to first prototype and so on. So what would you see? Maybe also the learnings. What would you do differently, or what would you say that worked out pretty well?
Yes, so what worked out very well is really the support we get here from Körber Digital. So usually, we are not a normal venture; we are a corporate venture. So what does this mean? The corporate group is looking for high potential ideas. As it is obvious, Körber is building such machinery, and they saw the case. They even tried to roll out their own product, but they saw, okay, this really brings such a value. We need to do something here, and we did this venture. And people like me who worked 10 years in pharma, for sure, I'm a pharma expert, but haven't done any venturing yet. So here, the support from all the, especially the venturing team, was really great in the beginning.
The second, Andreas, second question.
You can just call me Andy.
Andy, okay, Andy. You mentioned in your presentation about you talked about data deduplication and maybe if you generalize it a bit more like the value of data quality. How would you especially because I think that's something we know a lot of companies are really struggling on their journey. So how would you make the case for a company or an organization to say, okay, that's where you should invest. It's worth the investment. Even maybe the value comes then obviously indirectly from the execution of the use case.
Yeah, so maybe first of all, I would also consider being cautious. So not building everything, right, and putting it in the Galeria Kaufhof, but really making sure that you generate those things, right, that really add value in the end. And how would I do it? I would come from the very top, products, analytics products that we are doing, see what's most valuable and what do we need in terms of data. So then really derive the data needs from where the value is. So obviously this needs some kind of experience already because organizations need to have an idea of what are the valuable ideas out there. But this is also where portfolio management comes in. So really gather the ideas in your company, in your surroundings, make sure they are transparent, and then define what are the relevant data that you need to build and to ship those products properly. And that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Any question from the audience here? Now you have the opportunity. Okay, hold on.
Hi, I was wondering if you could give your thoughts on the first speaker's like 3 points of how to make sure your projects are successful in generating money. So that's know your place as a company, know your goals, and build trust. I'm asking because I have this impression that a lot of companies are interested in companies in consultancies that can basically do everything, right? So I was just wondering from your experience, what your experience has been.
So this is a question for me.
So I think what we do in venture building, for example, we do this purposefully as corporate venture building. And what is the point where we do this is also because we say we do have an unfair advantage. And we see this with InspectifAI, for example. We do have Andreas, who has 10 years of experience in pharma. And then we add to this the deep expertise in data science and also in how to quickly scale new companies. So this is exactly what this is about. So coming back to your question, what it needs, I think it needs exactly those 3 pillars. You need the trust, and by trust I mean, for example, InspectifAI is again a great example in this. The clients do trust in that our solution with InspectifAI, that InspectifAI solution is working well because we have that unfair advantage in pharma.
Okay. Maybe I can just add 2 things because you've basically summarized it. Yes, so our goal and the location where we are is purely farmers. So as I said in my presentation, it wouldn't work in another industry because the industry is already a step ahead. And so I totally agree with Lorenz. You need to know where you are. This is pharma. You need to build up the trust. For instance, I can speak in the pharma industry, they are super cautious in the beginning. So they only let you in if they have the trust. But once you have established the trust, it's not that they kick you out immediately. And yeah, so those are really facts I would say that they are true.
Andy, any?
Yeah, not a lot of things to add. I think know your place is super important. Also, data science is getting a commodity increasingly. So you should really work out where to focus on to really add that value to your customers, and then they will also start to trust.
Any next question?
How would you manage the balance between owning the technology and really being superior about that and partnering up using existing algorithms, refining models in terms of reinventing them?
Yeah, so I can start.
So the pharma industry is very specific. So I make an example. If you want to create the model and you do the labeling, there are 1,000 labeling apps outside there, but none is really GXP compliant, which is the best practice in pharma. So we invented our own labeling application, and when we really talk about the model, for sure we could use a very huge, powerful model, and then the inspection case would be easy. But here it's the same. We really invented something new. We tweak our models on our own with an own data science team, because bringing the model into such a machinery which is running with 600 parts per minute, you need to do the inference within 10 milliseconds. There's it's really a customization to do this, and
So I can only add to this and support this. I think what we are currently at is a state of large models, or the models are becoming commodity, like the general models. So what we need right now is the deep expertise. So basically we have the generalities covered. But if you try to ask today a ChatGPT or whatever model you want to take about a Körber machine specificities, whether this works well, you will have a hard time. So this doesn't work. But what you can do is build up on this. You don't have to build the whole model new again. You can set up on the core, on that the large language models understand the natural language perfectly, and then you add that maybe small part of proprietary data, but I would still call it data gold nugget, because that really adds the value then in this case and sets it apart from all the other models. Okay.
Another question.
Let me see how I phrase this. AI is a solution to everything, as we know, yeah, but it's not. So question is,
how often do you get proposed with a business case or with a customer who says, okay, I have heard about this AI thing, and you realize in the middle of the process, okay, AI ain't cut it. So we got to go, let's say, different route like chatbots or pre-trained processes or something like that. So basically what I'm saying is there an uptake in requests for AI solutions where AI is the wrong technique to do it? Let's say customer journeys or customer care, as we have already seen the question, because there are already solutions in place which aren't used as often as they could, and because people prefer human interaction most of the time. What's your take on this?
I can give a concrete answer. Related to our case, often the customer comes and says, okay, my machinery is not working well. And if you look on the machine, there are 20 cameras inside, and they say, okay, optimize it. And then we acquire the data, we analyze the machine, and we often come to the conclusion, okay, there are 1 or 2 camera stations which should be supported by a model, but it doesn't make sense to equip all cameras with a model just to bring AI in. So this is quite likely, and we are totally honest. Sometimes we even say, okay, this can be done optimized with AI technology, and here stick with the traditional inspection system you have. Just optimize it because you might have done something wrong. So be honest with the customer here.
Yeah, so I think in general, everyone is now even increasing their attention for AI. People are starting to think in the solution rather quickly, whereas we still go to our clients and ask them about their problem first. As you said, and I think Lorenz mentioned it in the very beginning, some things you just cannot fix with AI, or you can not easily fix them with AI, and that would be an easy thing to change the process, more easy thing in the end. So understanding the real problem behind and then finding the best solution is still a good idea. In particular, now AI is getting even more popular in a wider audience.
Yeah, I can only support this, and I would put it more broadly. I think you should never come from a technology first perspective. For me, this is quite tough to say because I love technology and I would love to check every use case with AI or with quantum computing, but I'm happy that I have people holding me back and say, okay, let's come from the problem first and then we see which technology we can map to this actually. And I think this is exactly the right way to go, even though it's sometimes not that fun maybe to find the problem first.
I'm Alex. I want to know about the regulation. You mentioned, Andreas, that you have somehow stated you're regulating people by your report. I'm wondering that you understand the report and how did you do that you can understand the report? That's the one side. When for all of you, you know that AI is coming to be regulated. So what are you thinking about it?
I do agree to your comment. So there's not a general invention how to regulate AI. So it's more about really regulating the step of qualification of such a model in the pharma industry. Maybe this is more precise, because what they need to have in pharma is they have to document how changes they are doing. And when you set up a system and you qualify it, what basically means you prove that it works as supposed to be, and you freeze this status, nothing should change anymore. But now imagine you have your AI, you retrain it. So what's next? You can show again the machine is working, but somehow the pharmaceutical companies, they want to have something documented. And here we invented a model change report related to this process, giving fundamental statements about the model, but it's more from an external point of view, talking about the model itself, how is it trained, what is the changes to the last version. So it's not really that the model is deeply explained, it's more about giving guidance to the maintaining of the model. Maybe this is answering the question.
It's done.
Unfortunately, yes. For us, luckily, this is pharma. If you're a data scientist, for sure, it's not answering your question. But for pharma, it's enough. Yeah.
Maybe related to that. So what are the typical counterparts in the process of onboarding and so on? So what's their background, and would you see that for example, how kind of literate they are with data and AI?
Yes, so usually the people who are facing this technology, those are so-called CSV, computer system validation specialists. So they are not data science, so they don't even have the capability to train a proper model on their own or have the mathematical understanding of it. And for them, it's in a pharmaceutical production, they look on, I don't know, thousands of computer systems. So it's quite difficult for them to understand it in deep. For them, it's really more about the process and how you maintain the AI, and to give them the confidence. If something unexpected is happening in the production, you can go back.
Right. Thanks for the talk. I'm Sebastian. I come from a purely research background. So question out of interest, and maybe also leading over from the last question. So you're selling a product basically, which is itself a bit opaque. So I would be interested about how the liabilities are regulated. So what happens if, say, your product goes wrong? Maybe there's an innovation in the packaging design, and all of a sudden you spill out hundreds of vaccines with oxygen inside the vial or whatever. So what are the regulations there, or how do you cope with this scenario?
Yeah, so usually it's a quite regulated industry. So it's not that on one day they are doing a thing which is completely different to the day before. For sure, it happens that they are changing the manufacture of a vial or of a syringe. It happens that maybe they struggle with the consistency of the product. But those are things we discuss up front. And here we even see advantages in AI, because if you remember my explanation with bending the curve, with the traditional methods, you just have a threshold and you have to come to the decision, okay, somehow I have to set this threshold. And if I'm below or higher, the problem you are describing, this problem already exists. And what we are doing is we are setting a range. We can even say, okay, if you have two different manufacturer of classes, then we train the model and make it happen that it can distinguish and see, okay, this is class manufacturer 1, B, and this is really something which is incorrect. Just to give you an example. Yeah, for sure we have insurance, but yeah. Usually what happens is there is a qualified process. You have criteria your models has to fulfill. And there's the Knapp-Kushner test, which all pharmaceutical companies have to do. And if you succeed, then it's more about the pharmaceutical company to maintain the process. If they are doing wrong, they cannot blame us. For sure, they will come. They always come if the model is acting unexpected. Yeah, but then usually you have those things defined in the SLA. Okay, we analyze it, we retrain the model, we tell them upfront how quickly we can retrain the model, and then usually you don't get fined. Yeah.
Andy, you presented the value framework, and I think earlier when after Loren's presentation, we had the question about the failure rate and the challenge of German Mittelstand. What would be your recommendation? How should companies, first of all, maybe what's your experience about maybe failure rate or success rate? Maybe let's talk about success rate. Typical German, we always talk about failures, but about success rate. But what would be maybe your 3 advice that companies in the process of identifying the use case or the ideas and so on? So what are the top 3 things they should look into that to get as much success out as possible?
In general, I think a lot of use cases still fail. Gartner has updated the report 2021. I think it was still about 80% of the use cases don't make it into long-term production. So that's quite a bit. And yeah, my recommendation would be to really understand the problem and get the business on board early and the users on board early to then ensure that you don't have an adoption risk in the end if you're in a big corporation, and make sure people understand what you're doing and work with it.
Maybe a bit similar question to you, Mats, related to that, because obviously you start with a lot of ideas addressing certain needs. So in that sense, you could say doing the matching. So what would you see are for you the typical exit criteria in that process, where you would say, great idea, the need is there, but maybe not the right time or not the right solution yet?
So in general, we differentiate between 3 different dimensions, and I think those are not new. Feasibility, so we can do this. Desirability, there is the actual customer need, and then also viability. And with desirability, you can do interviews, you can do like a venture clienting model, which is basically we have that problem within our own group, so we build a solution for this. So we basically set up on a problem we know by firsthand. Maybe not the most tricky part, but it's the tricky part is the viability side, coming from that before you enter the market. You can also do interviews, but from my experience, this is not super reliable. If I ask you today, would you pay tomorrow 10 euros for that? You would have said, yeah, nice idea, Max, I would do this. But if I come back tomorrow to you, maybe not. Thank you, maybe next time. So this is quite tough. What you can do is then basically set up a more structured approach with some pricing models. But at the end, I think it's important to do the best risk mitigation you can do till you reach a state where you say, okay, with enough confidence, I can enter the market now. And then you basically have to apply risk management. So once you hit that level, just go out there and test it with the assumption or with the necessity that you have the confidence that you did the best you can do, but then you just have to go out there and check whether this works. But you just have to see the viability in the real world.
I am Kirk. Just a thought with regards to knowing your place to some extent and this adding value. I'm just wondering if sometimes if you've come to the point where it seems like, okay, this adds some value, but maybe we're not the ones to be in charge of this. You know, if we want to focus on where we're adding the most value, sometimes you come across models that are useful, but perhaps they're better to open source or something like this. And I'm wondering if there's times when you have found things that you felt could be taken care of better by being open source than by handling internally.
Okay, Kurt, thanks for the question. I think that what we are sometimes facing is not that we are training models which are not bringing the value. It's more about that the customer is underestimating the effort of generating such a model. So for instance, the customer is coming to us and saying, okay, this is my product, this is my machine, can you train the model for it? And then when he realized, okay, what efforts needs to be put in and what does the solution cost at the end, he sees, okay, I don't know, I just produced 100,000 samples of them in a year. Then yeah, we are struggling a bit to find a case in particular. Then you have to see it more in general and see really the focus or a group of products. And then we really try to redefine the case for the customer to say, okay, can you see it in a brighter picture?
Yeah, and I think it very much relates to what Max already said before, these product management dimensions. So you should really figure out, does it make sense that you build it on your own? So often I've been working with data teams. Obviously, they want to build the fancy stuff themselves just because it's fun, and maybe don't take too much into consideration and evaluate properly. Is it actually reasonable to do this from a cost perspective, also from a viability perspective? Maybe I need to employ service levels in the end for models that I may not even be able to do by myself. So yeah, applying clear product management principles here again and evaluating, is it a make or buy decision or get somewhere else decision, for sure is something important.
All right, I think there's food very soon. Final question from my side. I think we have now experienced quite a wide time the last couple of months. So let's imagine May 2024. What will be the AI Monday discussion point we will sit in here?
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one. Maybe I take the chance to open not so fun discussion. I think we will talk a lot about regulation in 1 year. I think we will talk a lot about where are we with AIs, how much power they have, how much they influence our lives, where to set the boundaries, what to allow for AI, and then going even one step further, which is then the important step, is how to implement this regulations. It's always nice to have whatsoever act, but how to really implement this out there in the wide world, that you don't let AI completely free. And I think when you think this through, we all agree on this could end not too well for us. So yeah, pretty much we will talk about regulations pretty sure, among other more interesting or more funny topics.
So I like regulation. I wouldn't mind. Maybe not in AI, but in general, it's an interesting field. I have a wish what we should talk about, and that would be nice if we came to that point. Maybe causal AI it is, to really make sure we build proper models to also master the challenges that we have in terms of fairness and ethical AI.
But don't make it boring and also say regulation. I would really be interested in the transformation. So if I just think about InspectifAI, how much development in the last 1.5 years we have seen. If I go one step or 1 year further, I would be really interested to see other transformation cases out there in other industries. What is really happening would be quite interesting.
All right, so then I would say thanks a lot for the time. Also, thanks a lot for the metaverse people joining and their questions. Yeah, it was great to have you here. I think we, as you heard in the beginning, AI Monday is something which will happen regularly. There's in Berlin regular ones. There will be in other cities. Munich will be in July. Heilbronn had just a second one. And also maybe check out the website and YouTube channel because some of them have been recorded. So for example, there was one in Helsinki, GenAI in media, pretty interesting statements from people from the media industry and so on. And I hope you enjoy the evening. So it's also about networking. So we have talked now, but now hopefully you have also time to talk to each other and hope to see you soon, not only in May 2024. You heard about the topic. One of it will be regulation, maybe. And then with Andreas, we have a transformation kind of breakout session. Thank you.